very much, Lord. And let's see. Thank you all for coming. This is a room full of smart people with a good heart. And that's the most important thing. You have to have a good heart, but you also have to be smart. And so I'm very honored by your presence here this morning. Probably most of you have heard Margaret Mead's, the great anthropologist's, famous quote, "Never think that a small group of dedicated people cannot change the world." Indeed, that's the only way the world has ever been changed. We've got a small group of dedicated people here today. And so let's hope we have good luck with this conference and can move things ahead. I also want to thank Mary for putting all this together. She is a tireless miracle worker and organizer, and without her, of course, none of this, in fact, could get to know would not have happened. And I want to thank Wyland for my lapel pin, which he presented to me this morning. Happy Oceans Day, everybody. What a great day when you look at the Gulf of Mexico to be talking about Oceans Day. And I liked what was said. I hope that Oceans Day goes down even to the little puddles and the little ponds and the wetlands and the marshes as well. Wyland was wishing me happy birthday and happy Oceans Day. It's not my birthday today, just to clarify. My birthday is the 24th of May, or was the 24th of May. Which also Canadians might know was Queen Victoria's birthday. And I just learned it's also Bob Dylan's birthday. Not that we weren't all born in the same actual year, but I figure that I'm philosophically halfway between Queen Victoria and Bob Dylan. That's a mind twister for me. I'll be ranting away this morning, as I said last night. Basically, I only do two things nowadays. I paint and I rant. And I'm not ranting at you, of course. You know all this stuff and you feel all this stuff. I hope I'm giving you more ammunition, perhaps, for your ranting in turn as you get out into your neck of the woods and try to move this incredibly important historical movement that is happening, negative movement that is happening that Mary alluded to. It's just shocking. 6%, I think you said, 2009 kids actually spend any significant amount of time playing outdoors. This has great repercussions for the future. I think it is way more important than many issues that billions of dollars are spent on, such as security, by the way, for the 2 days of the G20 conference. A million seconds is 12 minutes. A billion seconds is 32 years. It's a big difference between a billion and a million. We're spending billions on a whole lot of nonsense, and yet we're cutting corners when it comes to kids out in nature. And I'll talk more about that in a moment or two. It's a bunch of gigantic forces. You're preempting me. That's okay. A bunch of gigantic forces that are reaching my pocket. That we're up against. And a lot of these are fairly new forces. The newest ones, of course, are what James referred to, the electronic world, is a huge force. But also, governments are working against this, what we're trying to do. School boards, the Department of Education are working against what we're trying to do. Lawyers are working against what we're trying to do. Parents are working against. Fearful moms are working against what we're trying to do. There's so many obstacles that it is, and here's my first slide, it is like a, oh, that's the second slide. That's my third slide. I'm blowing my, it's like a juggernaut that we're up against. And just in case you've never seen a juggernaut, that's a juggernaut. It's a great chariot of war that was used in India. I think it was mostly during the Mughals. And I believe I've got kids, yeah, there's a kid. Kids in this picture, you can get an idea of the size of it. It was a huge chariot pulled by elephants. And our side would be, in this case, the other guys, would be up on top here with their bows and arrows. And you can imagine an opposing army with these elephants coming in, with these juggernauts, and they're shooting down on it with these bows and arrows. It is a very impressive piece of armament. But we're up against a great juggernaut. Since the beginning of our species, let's say 1 million years ago, kids and adults have always fooled around outdoors. Always until about 15 years ago. It's a totally new thing for our species, and I'm scared stiff of what this tells us for the future. That's why I think it's so important. It has implications for parents of the future and voters of the future. And voters of the future are going to be the ones that control budgets and government spending and actual spending in the malls and supermarkets. And is it going to be green spending, or is it going to be consumerism spending? That's what it is. It's the hearts and minds that we're after today. And as they said in the Vietnam War, and they're now saying in Afghanistan, that's the most important thing. And we've actually got a lot of backsliding. This is a scene in the forest of Sarawak, North Borneo. And there's a teenager here of the Bateman tribe. Is the sound okay? Now we got both speakers working. Okay. The Bateman tribe is now extinct because of logging. So this was taken just about 15, 20 years ago, before these big multinational logging companies got going in their world. And an anthropologist who was studying ethnobotany, in other words, medicinal plants that could perhaps have the cure for cancer and all kinds of things, we know that. And they're being wiped out at a huge rate, virtually on a daily basis now. The gene pool is just gone because of all this thoughtless logging that's going on. He went for a walk with this kid in the forest, and he had his notebook. He was going to take notes of the different plants and the native name for them, and what they do for their native health and diet and culture and so on. And he started writing in his notebook, and he'd only gone about as far as from the back of the room in an hour, and he filled up the notebook. This kid knew hundreds and hundreds of species of plants and what they do in different seasons. These folks are not primitive, they're sophisticated. We're totally unsophisticated ignoramuses in most of things dealing with the natural world as a general populace now. I just read that Shakespeare knew 60 birds and over 300 plants because he played around in the meadows and woodlands and so on around Stratford when he was a kid growing up. And I may mention, well, I might as well mention now, I'm told that the average North American kid can recognize over 1,000 corporate logos, but they don't know the names of 10 species of their neighbors, of other species, which is how the whole get to know thing started, as you probably know. When Mary asked me that question, what was the most important thing that I could think of for young people? And that was the good old days, just a few years ago. It's changed now in a downward direction. I said, it'd be great if kids could get to know the names of their neighbors of other species. And I happen to be big on names. This is my eccentricity. You can't just say, oh, I love that tree. You've seen one tree, you've seen them all, like Ronald Reagan said. Every tree has a name. Not every, well, you can name your individual trees if you want to. But certainly every species has a name, every bird has a name. And we don't know what's going on with the planet unless we know the names of these things. And we know that the all-sided flycatchers, we used to hear them all the time. Now we heard, I heard you got one yesterday. Scored, you still here? Yeah, there you are. Yeah, that's right. So we've been backsliding terribly since our ancestral time. And the backsliding is now accelerating.